Welcome to Sparking Success with Aaron Opalewski. Aaron brings you conversations that spark innovation, cultivate leadership skills, and pave the way for your business success. In each episode, we delve into the dynamic world of business and leadership, exploring strategies, insights, and success stories that fuel your professional journey. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Sparking Success. My name is EJ, and I'm joined with my very good friend, Aaron Opalewski. Aaron, how are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm great. Bright and early, getting after it, recording podcasts today.
Yeah.
And, you just got back from an amazing conference.
Yeah.
We're glad to have you back. And I know there was a ton of impact that you had there. It was with Mark Whitby, who is a guest that we've had on your show before, and you've been on his. How was the trip?
It was awesome. It was one. I mean, Mark has been on. He's just a great guy. And that was my first time meeting him in person. So he did just a phenomenal, and when I say he did, his whole team did a phenomenal job.
Awesome.
On this event. I've been to a lot of events, and the way that they put it together and then the stuff that they talked about, because they had, Mark did a couple sessions and he's a genuine guy.
Yeah.
It pours out of him. And he just did a really great job.
Class act.
And then he's a really good speaker and knows what he's talking about as well. So I just thought they did awesome. So props to Mark and the team.
Yeah, I love hearing that. When we get together and spend time on the podcast, we often talk about day-to-day things that are real. Yeah. We don't like to talk a lot about theory, although sometimes it slips in there. But today, we're going to be talking about conversion ratios.
Yep.
We'll start off and talk a bit about conversion ratios within staffing and recruiting, but we're also going to take that a bit further and just talk about conversion ratios in general.
Yeah, I think what we'll do is we're going to talk about this from a recruiting and staffing lens. But my advice, when I speak to the team or, out, in public is like, hey, don't look at something and think, oh, this doesn't apply to me. Wrong mindset. Think, oh, how could this apply to what I'm doing? And sometimes you can really get creative and put some unique things together for your business when you're hearing about things that are in another business. Yeah. But when you don't get to do that, when you immediately shut it off and so, oh, he's talking about something in recruiting and staffing and I'm in, content,
creative
media. So this doesn't apply. So we're going to use that as an example.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. So Aaron, there's likely rules of thumb within conversion ratios or fill ratios, however you want to describe that within recruiting. What are some of the key things that we need to talk about today as we dive into this discussion?
Well, so we look at the two as different. So let's get the definition of the language, behind it. So conversion ratio would be anyone that we submit to a client, for a job, a placement that we're going to make. Anyone that we submit, what happens with them?
Okay.
And so when we submit them, that candidate, do we ultimately place them? And some things that can, and we kind of follow the journey of the candidate. Now, some things that can help with the conversion ratio is if we submit someone to multiple departments, or we maybe submit them to multiple clients, it will up the conversion ratio.
Okay.
So in areas where we have a condensed focus of, like in a geographical area, or a skill set that could work remote, let's say, and we could submit that same candidate to multiple places. Like, EJ, you submit me and I don't get a job at client A for whatever reason. But you submit me to client B and I do get hired.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is our conversion ratio. So it more follows the journey of the candidate.
Okay.
Our fill ratio is going to be tied to the requirement. So the individual order, job order that we have, with someone. So if I have 10 job orders and I have, that one candidate, I might convert that one candidate, but let's say they were applicable to all 10 openings. Probably not the case, but for example, well, with that one candidate, I can only fill, one of those 10 positions. So it's a little difference. We look at both because we think both are important and there's some small little nuances. So what would those be on a conversion ratio For me, it's mainly we're looking at, are we able to manage our time effectively? And it's not, there are effective and long-term things that can happen just from having a good interaction with a potential candidate, but it goes better when you actually place them.
Right.
In a general sense, context to everything, but it goes better, right? So when I'm working with a candidate and I have a focus, in that area, I'm more likely to create a good experience. I can also listen real well and try and nail it the first time. Because if I only have one job in a state for one specialized type of opening, I can only talk to everybody about that one job. And there is someone out there for that role, but I could talk to other people that may be well qualified, but something about that role makes it not right for them, or them not right for the company. And if I have kind of a portfolio of opportunities, that we can talk to that person about, I'm probably going to drop that into the right fit all around, right fit for the person, the right fit for the client. And ultimately that's how we win. And that's our principle of create win-win-win situations right there in action.
Yeah. Now within that, just because I'm newer to the recruiting space, is there conversation about our conversion rates with clients? Is that ever a stipulation, or is that something that we talk about? I know our conversion rates are really high, or
they
really
could always be better.
Okay.
but yeah, so I think it's a great place to be if you're able to talk with data about this to your clients. Now, you could either be presenting case studies of what is effective and what may not be effective, like kind of like client profiles on those things, on a conversion or fill ratio. We could also be looking at live on how it's going with the client. And because we want to work long-term with clients, I think this is a great place to be, because it can ebb and flow. And if you have this is part of the reason I would recommend tracking this data. One, it's for deployment of your internal resources, which is, I think, the most, culture, core values, building a team that is aligned, with those things and has the unique characteristics to do the roles. That's kind of like the foundation. Well, let's say you're working on all that, and that's an ongoing thing you're working on. Well, part of your team developing is working on the right projects that are going to be successful.
Right.
So now we get into this stuff, and we can have a really great run with a client, or we can be working really well with the client in one area. And it can also be true that changes, or that in other areas of their business, it's not going as well. It happens all the time where it's like, we do better in this area of a client than we do we might do better in engineering than we do on placements on the floor in skilled trades and light industrial, or vice versa. Well, why? Let's look at the data. Let's talk about it. And like, the more we can tell factual stories about what's going on and present data behind it to our clients, the better conversations we can have.
Got it.
And then if you can take what you did over here, what was working, and put that in other parts of the business, or you can take what you're doing with a client and have a success story and show that to a client where maybe the ratios are flipped and they're going the wrong direction, you might be able to get that flipped around.
Got it.
That's probably in my opinion, that's your best way to do it, is to be showing them what success looks like, walking them through from an advisement standpoint, in a lot of these situations, on what needs to happen to make a shift. Now, some of what we're talking about is like, as you've been working, with the client, you could also go into a situation, be listening to someone about, a lot of times you get in meetings and there's struggles with someone else they were working with, or there's roles that have been open for a period of time and they weren't working with someone. They have questions about working with someone, but like, we're going through, well, how long's the position been open? Why is it open? How many times has it been open? All kinds of things that are going to come up in there. And we can start to present what a success story looks like. And we do it a lot. The frame that I like to do it from is this data a lot of the time. There's some other ones too. It's a really good one.
So the data teaches us the win overall. And as it does, when you're working with a recruiter, when you're working with an account manager,
Mhm.
and you see a dip in that conversion or an increase in that conversion,
Yeah.
what type of things highlight for you, or what type of things pop out?
Well, let's just use a real life example of last year. I'm not going to say the company name because I just don't feel
Yeah.
the need to. It's not important. But so one of our companies in the portfolio at about the halfway point in the year was at an 8% conversion ratio overall on their submittals. Now, what were some of their issues? What I just talked about. They work nationally.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's great. But a lot of the times that means when they're talking to a candidate, they might, and we are brought in to work on niche, type positions. So a lot of times when they're talking to a candidate, they only have one position to talk to them about, which is going to hurt their ultimate, just naturally, they're going to have a harder time on their conversion ratios.
They can't place them in Indiana or Wisconsin or Dallas or
not unless they're dealing with someone that wants to relocate, and those generally don't have high success rates either. That's a whole nother thing. But so what do we have to do on that? Well, we know that that's a dynamic, and so when you look at recruiting time and all this stuff, one, that's why pricing needs to be set accordingly for their time. But they have to make sure they're rock solid on how they're qualifying their orders. And so what we did, in seeing that is we really dove into what are we working on? Why? What information do we have? What time are we coming into the search? If we're coming in late, you might be better to hold, let them go through a round, and then enter, if they don't have anyone that they're considering. If we come in late, and this is pretty basic, stuff in staffing, but if it's not getting deployed, it's going to affect these ratios. Mm-hmm. So the success story in this is we moved it not in the second half of the year, but overall for the year, we moved that into the mid 20s for 2024. And started by looking at it, talking about it, coaching on it, and being more intentional about, more, but the things I just mentioned. And it worked. And their business grew immensely, and they had a record year.
Right.
There's a lot of other things that go into it, but at the end of the day, they were working hard the whole year. Great group.
Mm-hmm.
We needed to point our resources in the right direction to get better fulfillment, for our clients. And they executed on that to that level, and it turned into, in the back half of the year, they had a record year. The best they've ever done on all fronts: profitability, sales revenue, gross profit, all records. That doesn't happen at 8%.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So once you guys started to look at the data within that specific company, you started to understand, because I want the listeners to really get, at least in the recruiting space, what type of things, as you saw that data, you changed.
It's drilling down on what we're working on, where it's at in process. Do we have all the information? Do we have access to the hiring managers or not? Do we know that they're fully ready to make a decision? That kind of stuff.
Okay, now I got it.
The number one thing in recruiting, in my opinion, again, outside of that foundational stuff that we talked about, well, you get into how are you going to develop people? Well, it all comes back to time allocation. What other business, you don't work in a business, and this is a good thing. This is a blessing. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a curse within recruiting. It's an opportunity to outpace the industry. That's how I look at it. But in your industry, could you imagine taking on a client, doing all this recording, doing all this work, right? Presenting it to the client, and then them saying, no, I don't want any of that, and I'm not going to pay you anything for it.
Right.
That's contingent recruiting.
Got it.
There's other styles.
That's a great illustration.
And that's why. But imagine if you did that.
Yeah.
And so in recruiting, good conversion fill ratios can be 30%.
Okay.
That's why things need to be priced accordingly, because you're not always going to make money on your time. Well, you better get really good at your time allocation, because otherwise you're just going to get annihilated. And imagine if you are bad at that and you're underpriced. Now you're really going to struggle.
So
that's why a lot of recruiting companies don't either they don't make money sustainably, or when they start to move from that one, person that's good in sales to try and develop a team, these are the things, like if you work on anything, it would be track this first and then work on it. Now, the blessing that a lot of smaller agencies have is they do have a good, salesperson. But can that person transfer the knowledge to others? And can they, this is pretty straightforward. Start with something like this, because we're not always the best teachers just because we're good at something. And that's 100% true. There's just unique things that you do, maybe on a call or with a client that are hard to transfer. But this, at least tracking this like they may be doing something different on a call than what they can transfer to other people. But the way that you start to fix something is you measure it. What gets measured gets managed.
Okay. So I have a better picture of it within recruiting now.
Yeah.
If you look at business wider than that, right? What I'm drilling my own brain here. I'm thinking about Bolt, right?
Yeah. So here's what how does this pertain to Bolt?
Yeah.
We don't do placements right now.
Right.
So this doesn't pertain to Bolt. Okay. If that's how you feel, you could just go watch another podcast.
Yeah.
Here's what I would say to that. Well, what's my versions of that within Bolt? Well, I think it is our commitment, rates on meetings. So where we actually move forward, and then, or at least get to a proposal, might be one. And then I might need to measure how many proposals are going out to get a full commitment.
Yeah.
Knowing that our ratios, like we're still learning about those, but what are we trying to do right now? What would you hear me talk about a little? Like we're really trying to drill down on making sure we have the data right, so that I can help give more direction on how many meetings we need to set, how many proposals we need to send out. And then as we're watching that, we're either going to see an improvement, or a retraction, and we can start to look at other things. Do we have this priced right? Did we, I think in a lot of our stuff, like we've given really favorable pricing, to our clients. Well, to protect time allocation, as our demand has grown within the business, we're raising prices in a fair, way.
Yeah.
So within doing that, we have a system and a framework to do that. And we've talked about that, and you guys have done a great job on that. When we're measuring this other stuff though, let's say we raise it and we see our proposal conversions get cut by 75%.
Right.
Well, we may have found like a breaking point for where we need to be
threshold
on pricing, because we're not going to raise prices 100 to, we're not gouging, people on this, but we're going to raise them incrementally to make sure we can fulfill for the customers we have, and we can set up the frameworks to continue to fill as we move forward. Plus, some of our early customers are just getting the benefit of giving us the opportunity.
Yeah.
And we're grateful, for that opportunity. And that's one of the ways that we show it. And better pricing.
Yeah. Now, if you were looking at an overall salesperson or someone who's in, let's just say in that arena, in the greater market, and your answer, I guess, to me may be that really varies per market. Is there a generalized conversion ratio that you would want to see from initial meeting to proposal to contracted?
It's a great question. I think you answered it for yourself, as it varies, in my opinion, per market. I just don't see how it wouldn't. I think what I'll say is a lot of it has to do with sales cycles and price points, and then how funds transfer.
Okay.
Do they transfer up front for services like you guys, or do they transfer after delivery? Even things like that can sway what like a commitment, ratio may look like.
Okay.
But you think like longer sales cycles, right? Or in a higher ticket, let's say you're selling a product or service that is like 7-figure, proposals, maybe 8-figure proposals. We haven't done the 8-figure proposals. We've only done 7, but I can tell you our 7-figure proposals take much longer. And usually there's like little mini projects before we go to full commitment on those 7-figure, programs. There's mini projects that happen first. Those can take years, to come together. They don't have to, but they have, in a couple instances. Well, compared to if we're doing a search for, light industrial labor, we might walk into a conversation like this. And in some instances, if I have a pool of people ready to go, you might be telling me who you would like to have come to work for you right then and there.
Yeah.
Like they could be there in hours.
Right.
Or the next morning. And we've done a lot of that. I really built, my beginning stages of doing this at a higher level and starting to make, more money. And yeah, it was that, that type of staff.
Yeah. And we've had instances of that too, I guess, with Bolt. We had a client just before Christmas that was, nominated for a super special, kind of award within their industry, and posted, hey, we need some photography and videography done for, this potential win, I'll call it.
Yeah.
And we were there the next day.
Yep.
Now there's another client that I've been talking to for quite some time, and we have not had the commitment from them. It really varies, right? And there's times where I sit back, and I'm sure people who are, listening right now are thinking through the aspect, okay, what do I need that percentage of commitment or conversion to be?
Yeah.
And, Aaron, I think on the show, one of the things that I've loved learning from you is, knowing your numbers, as you referenced earlier with data and things like that, but also the aspect of what your gross profit is. Now, I think the only reason that I can bring this up right now, because I'm still growing in my understanding a ton on this. Do people, or is there a hesitancy at times to manage people by their conversion? And I'm going to take it a step further, because I think in the sales world, quite a bit, it's like, oh, did you get that sale? But recently we've been talking about don't go below a margin on that sale or that type of thing.
Yeah.
And what I'm getting at is, do you ever find businesses that are so focused on the conversion that they ditch their margin? Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And is there a time to do that?
I mean, there's nuance to everything. You may find a situation where it makes sense, specifically if you're building your brand, your company, maybe a new division or service line where you're going to do things, you're going to take some calculated risks on, hey, we're going to do this for free, for this customer, or we're going to do this at a discounted price. Or, there's instances where it's like, hey, you might do all this other work and they ask you to do something else and they ask for a discount, and, you have a choice to make on stuff like that. What I think is, in the general sense, a mistake is to focus so much on converting at some ratio, target that let's say you wanted to be 50% on your proposals. Well, if you're getting to 50% because you are selling on price and then you're undercutting yourself on price, you're setting yourself up for whole different issues. Cause I think you need to look at stuff with like the lifetime value of the customer in mind. And again, you can take some calculated sprints or run some races where you do more for less. We kind of shared that at Bolt. Like as you start the company out, that's a version of that. But then what do you hear? We're needing to up that as we're building our case studies, our workload, to be able to fulfill, for our current customers, and then add, we have to be moving, pricing.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Well, or why do we need to do that? Well, we might need to add tools. We might need to add human beings, probably both, in this day and age. And we got to add people that can use the tools. And that becomes more important by the second. So those things take money and, resources, right? Well, I have to price myself accordingly.
Yeah.
Is my service also getting better as those things are happening?
Yep.
It better be.
Yeah.
And so therefore, the price, probably needs to increase, or there's going to be points in time where that's true.
Right.
So I get myself into trouble where I'm so focused on this ratio that's supposed to be a blueprint for my success, and I do things to cut corners on it. Well, now I'm going to run into issues where I can't fulfill the business that I get.
Yep.
And I'm going to have upset customers who leave me and who tell other people not to go to me.
Right.
And that's a bad spot to be in.
Yeah. Okay. So as we wrap this one up today, if you were to give 3 main takeaways, even, if it's part of the recap of what you already said, where would you land in these 3 things with conversion or commitment ratios?
Yeah, I would say start to track, whatever's important to you in this front, and like, hey, what do I need to track how we're fulfilling it, or who's committing, to us? I gave the versions that we track in the recruiting world. So start by just tracking it. Then number 2 is communicating to your team or yourself or both by looking at that. What does that say? And doing that in a cadence, would be my 3rd thing, so that I'm not gonna attack the person. I'm gonna attack the factual data that we have, and go about that however we need to do. Either we're gonna attack the problem, or we have an opportunity, and like, let's keep attacking that opportunity because it's working. Let's go all in on it. While we have the momentum on that. But I'm doing that not from an emotional state, or not from a personal state. Let's just look at this.
Right.
And what can we learn from it? How do we improve? It might be that we need to go work on our actual communication style and meetings, or how we present our offerings. And that's probably always true that we want to work on that and hone that. But the data tells us a lot about how we're improving on that, or not improving, or flatlining, or, and maybe a flat line, if our ratios are way above what we deem, best practice, and we can hold it there and we can add to the volume, it's a huge win.
Yeah.
Or if we can hold that as we're having other people start to do that as the business is growing, huge win.
Yeah.
So generally these things might go like this, which is why it's not only good to track it like week to week, but having like some visual graphs that show you how it goes up and down.
Yeah. And I'm sure that historically, year over year, you're able to see that too. Hey, this is a prime season for this. This is a season that's slower, XYZ. I think that's one of the things I'm excited about with Bolt in the future, is being able to see, wow, people really jump into this type of project during this season, this type of project during this, season. And, that's exciting. Aaron, I think that this is one of those episodes that we can certainly learn from other people as well. And we're always trying to learn from other people. But if you're, watching or listening today, we would love for you to take a moment, maybe share with us some of your metrics, some of the data points that you use in conversion and commitments. Because Aaron and I, as business owners, as leaders, we're always trying to grow as well. So if you'd take a second, not only like and subscribe, but would you also drop a comment down and give us a little bit of your take on this? Help us to understand what you've learned over the seasons and what you're using in those conversion and commitment ratios. And maybe even if you're in the recruiting space, that fill ratio as well. Aaron, this is it's got my brain like churning right now. So I hope I'm not leaving anything on the table, because I'm in one of those modes right now, thinking through things as I'm talking.
That's good.
And
that's what we want.
I think that's probably true for other people as well. So thanks for the wisdom today, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of this stuff we put together from stuff that's formally set within the industry, but it's also from exactly what you're talking about. Is you listen to what people are doing within their business, and we figured out how to customize some of that stuff and put it into our businesses.
Yeah.
So it's from the same type of thing.
I love
we
that.
thought it would be a good topic to go through. And you mentioned know your numbers, and this is kind of one of those numbers, but that was more, we talked about it in a general sense, and we went through some of the stuff, but it's like, hey, let's focus on, one of these areas a little bit more.
Yeah. I think we need to, knowing your numbers was one of our really early episodes.
Yeah.
I think we need to redo like a master class on knowing your numbers. Maybe people want to hear that. If that's you, let us know. Aaron, thanks again today, sharing the wisdom. For all of you out there, we hope you have a great day. Thanks for joining us on Sparking Success today.